Welcome to the France 24 interview. I'm Stephen Carroll. Today we're looking at a question that preoccupies politicians and economists alike: how to make a country more prosperous. To discuss that and more, I'm joined in studio by the Nobel Prize-winning economist Edmund Phelps. Thank you very much for coming in to us, Professor Phelps.
Thanks for having me.
You've written a book called Mass Flourishing: How Grassroots Innovation Created Jobs, Challenge and Change. It's just been translated into French. You're also a professor at Columbia University, I should say. In the book, you say that Western economies have been close to stagnation or in decline for decades now. What's gone wrong for them?
They've lost the rate of innovation that had driven the economies for so long. They didn't lose it all, but they lost much of it, especially in the traditional industries. And Silicon Valley helped save the United States to a degree by creating some new industries. But I think innovation has been blocked in the traditional industries. So we're operating at something like half speed. And as a result, wages don't grow as they used to. They grow very slowly, appreciably for some, barely at all for others. And on top of that, there's also been a loss of good jobs, and the job losers feel a loss of inclusion, a loss of belonging in something that was worthwhile and rewarding. You see this in France, in the Lorraine region, and the West Midlands in Britain, and in the now famous Appalachia area in the United States.
And what could be done about that? What's the solution that you come up with in your book?
Well, I believe the cause of the problem has a lot to do with costly government policies aimed at social protection, economic protection, whatever. When an innovator, if an innovator were lucky enough to be able to break into an industry, it might find that the government comes to the rescue of the incumbents, so that the invader into the industry is unable to make a go of it because the government is backing the ones that are already there. The other thing is that there's been, I think, a sea change in attitudes of workers, of working-age people. In the 19th century, in the heyday of innovation, people in all sorts of jobs, from the top right down to the grassroots of society, were thinking about their work. Craftsmen, artisans, and people in companies, thinking about new ways of producing, thinking about new products that they might produce. And the country was in almost a frenzy of activity of an innovative sort. I know this seems totally implausible, but Abraham Lincoln had the same impression after a tour of the economy after a tour of the country in 1858. He said, "There's a perfect passion for the new."
And that's gone now, you're saying?
I think that is largely gone. That doesn't mean that there's nobody out there who has it. Of course, there are a few individuals who still have it, more than a few. But it's tougher for them because the government's not on their side, and it's tougher for them because, you know, sometimes workforces are not on the side of the would-be innovator. I suppose, how do we get that innovation back? How do we light the fire under people to get them to create that perhaps element that has disappeared? I think we've got to get that culture back, that culture of individualism, of vitalism, of self-expression that drove this wave of innovation to begin with.
Are developments like, we talk a lot in France in particular about Uberization of the labour market. You know, people are losing traditional jobs, the way that people work is changing. How does that fit into your theory? Do you feel that could help perhaps open up the way for that innovation?
Well, it represents an innovation. It represents a new way of delivering desired services, and tapping demands that nobody knew beforehand existed. I'm sure there's going to be more of that. That seems to be a direction in which computerization has taken us and opened up for us. But I don't think that that's going to be the most important description of the way economies are headed. I'm much more concerned about robots, AI. That's something that's going to be very important to follow. I think in the old days, innovation lowered the price of consumer goods. Everybody gained. Now it looks like innovation is lowering the prices that manufacturers get, which hits labor, hits the workers hard too, and so we've got to figure out, we've got to work on both fronts, getting the general rate of innovation up, and we're dealing with this special problem of the robots.
And can public policy help there? I mean, for example, in France, President Emmanuel Macron, one of his election promises was to invest 50 billion euros in training and development and retraining of workers that are in industries that are no longer providing jobs. I know that you'd prefer the government to take itself out of some of these sectors, but can it make positive steps in that direction as well?
Well, those would be positive steps. There might be and it might be considered emergency steps. You wouldn't want to promise retraining to everybody, every single person who loses his or her jobs. I think that's a little bit extreme. But I don't. I think the big initiative that Macron seems to be eager to take is to create more freedom for employers, to create more freedom for individuals to start companies and enter industries, and create more freedom for these entrepreneurs to run the companies. It's terrible that a startup might have made a mistake and hired too many people, and then he finds it's going to take a year or two before he can downsize his operation, by which time he may be broke. So there are all sorts of reforms that have to be made. But I come back to my main theme that we got to change the culture. We have to change the way of thinking about business and innovation. And understand that it's fun, it's exciting, it's rewarding, but there's some costs we have to pay to get it.
I'm interested in when you describe, rather than prosperity, you talk about flourishing, and you talk about the elements that are, that contribute to that, the idea of having meaningful work, self-expression, personal growth. As an economist, they're not things that we often hear from you and your colleagues. Why did you choose to examine that in such a holistic way?
Well, it just seemed to me that they were important, and I had to scratch my head a lot to figure out what words were good to express what I was trying to express. It's only been recently that I've decided that what I mean by prospering is a sense of succeeding at what you're doing. I think that captures pretty well the basic idea of prospering, which goes back to the Latin prospere, by the way. and then what do I mean by flourishing? A word that I've used quite a lot. Well, I think that's more about personal growth, the experience of exploring, the excitement of pushing into the unknown. So I think both of these are very important goods, non-material goods, that we want to have when we want to see all people have access to.
Something we see with particularly high-flying university students is they tend to be attracted to the high-paying jobs, the banks, those are the ones that attract, for example, graduates from Columbia University. For many of those people, how do we encourage those sort of people to perhaps take a less well-paying but more meaningful or more innovative role in the world of work?
I'm interested in that question. How did you know that Columbia students are looking for high-paying jobs? I think they are. And but by the way, I think it's getting a little better. I think now I see a somewhat increasing proportion of the students very interested in innovation. Maybe interested in the financing of it, interested in the involvement in it. So maybe we've hit bottom in terms of ambitions, values, desires, and things might be on the upswing. But I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think students should be taught the great books, and the great books about adventure, exploration, even heroism, creativity,
and to inspire their innovation from
works. That. The more fanciful, the better. So I think we got to get back to that in the high schools, and all universities should be putting a lot of emphasis on the humanities.
Okay, Edmund Phelps, economist and professor at Columbia University, thank you very much for coming in to speak to us. Thank you for watching. Coming up next, the latest international news headlines. This is France 24.